Good morning, Your Excellencies, participants, ladies and gentlemen, friends of the African Diaspora Agrofood Forum. It's a pleasure to be here with you to moderate this 5th edition of the forum. I'm Yentel Williams, and I'm the founder and director of the African, Caribbean and Pacific Young Professionals Network. It's a pleasure to see the development of this forum in its 5th edition. And in this regard, it's important to share the history of where the network has come from. The Food Bridge started in 2014, as did our network, the African, Caribbean and Pacific Young Professionals Network. In that context, neither youth nor diaspora received much attention in policy debates. That was in the former Cotonou Partnership Agreement context between the EU and the African, Caribbean and Pacific states. Nowadays, if we look at the post-Cotonou Agreement, which manages relations between the EU and the ACP states beyond 2020, we see a significant shift. Diaspora is mentioned 16 times within the text, and youth is mentioned 60 times. This is significant. Within this context, diaspora is mentioned in regards to inclusive, sustainable economic growth and development, mobilization of sustainable and responsible investment, and as well as diaspora development and remittances. It's important to contextualize this history to know how far we've come from and where we are going in the future. In this regard, I'm very pleased to open the 5th edition of the African Diaspora Agrofood Forum, and I would like to welcome the founder of the forum, Maureen Duru. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you very much, Yentel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Food Bridge and the organizing partners, I welcome you to this 5th edition of the African Diaspora Agrofood Forum. For those that do not know the Food Bridge, Yentel has already given a brief introduction of how we started. The Food Bridge is a non-profit organization registered in Belgium. Our work focuses on 4 main areas. These include protection of indigenous food systems and food cultures, access to acceptable food and nutritious, acceptable and nutritious food, economic empowerment, research, and education. A cross-cutting theme in our work is the African diaspora food culture and entrepreneurship. We've been consistent over the years in our promotion of African diaspora entrepreneurship, especially agro-food entrepreneurship. Our goal over the years is to highlight the potentials of African diaspora entrepreneurs and create links to useful resources that can help these potentials to grow and impact on the different nations of Africa. As mentioned also by Yentel in her introduction, and as we all know, when we talk about the African diaspora with regards to the development of Africa, the focus has always been on the remittances that, go from the diaspora to the continent. This covers both the formal and informal remittances. There has been very little formal recognition, except in the last few years, of the African diaspora investments and entrepreneurial projects in Africa. Many of these projects that African diasporas are undertaking, both in the countries where they are residents and in their countries of origin, still remain under the radar of development policies of governments and funders. So a lot of the time, it's more about self-funding and personal efforts of those that live in the diaspora. So I believe that there has to be a realignment of strategies to support the growth of African diaspora entrepreneurship, especially in the agro-food sector. The pandemic has shown how fragile reliance on remittances can be, because if you're living in the diaspora, you can only send remittances when you have an income. If you're not making an income, you will not be able to send any money back home. So it's time we explore further new ways of linking remittances of African diasporas and entrepreneurship to have a more sustainable development of communities and people in Africa. For this year, the theme of our forum is recovery, resilience, and sustainability. That looks at African Diaspora Agrofood entrepreneurship in a changing world. This is a reflection of the global realities of the COVID pandemic and its impact, especially in the agrofood sector in different parts of the world, including Africa. So although the pandemic had a major impact in the health sector, another area that it really affected very much is the agrofood sector. People have to eat to be alive. And if someone is hungry, they're not going to pay attention to restrictions or to instructions about how to take precautions when they don't have food to eat to be alive. So that shows the importance of having a strong and sustainable agrofood sector. And also, the African diaspora, we have to look at new approaches and new partnerships that will include all stakeholders. So this challenge has shown us that yes, we have a working system, but there's something that needs to change with regards to this system to make it stronger, to make it more, to make the partnerships more involving, bringing in stakeholders from different sectors of the economy. And the African diasporas are important stakeholders in the development of the African agrofood sector. And I believe that they can play important roles, not just as consumers, but as producers too. For many of us living in Europe, African food is part of our daily diet. We spend a great percentage of our feeding budget buying this food from non-Africans who control the market, thus leaving our community who are the producers with the least economic benefit. So we have farmers in Africa that grow the food. We are the ones in the diaspora that spend our money buying the food, yet our community receive the least economic benefit from this sector. So I emphasize that there is something wrong about African diasporas not being in control of their food market. I think we are the only diaspora community anywhere in the world that have people that are not from within their community controlling their food market. So we need to work together, look for resources to be able to correct this anomaly, but we know that it's all about business. And in business, you have to have the funds and the resources for you to be able to compete. Having said this, the African diaspora food markets will have more growth in the coming years. As indicated recently by information that was shared online recently by COLEACP, between 2008 and 2018, there was a 9.5% growth in the food, in annual growth in the fresh vegetables exported from sub-Saharan Africa to the diaspora food market. That's the food products that are referred to as ethnic food. So for many that are born in the diaspora to African parents, eating African food is part of their lives. And for some of them, is their only affiliation to Africa. However, this new generation of consumers are well informed, more demanding, have higher expectations regarding ethics, sustainability, food stuff, and food safety, and so forth. So with this increasing demand in the diaspora and beyond, many producers in the African continent also want to access the European markets. Some of them are participants today because they are here to also explore ways that they can be able to have access to these markets. But yet, I believe that we have to ensure that we are producing enough to feed the people that are within the African continent, and then those of us that are in the diaspora. And for this to happen, we need to link resources, create partnerships, explore different ways of collaborations between entrepreneurs that are resident in Africa and those living in different African diaspora communities. to ensure not just the availability of the food, but that the food that is sold in all the markets, that they meet the required standards, whether it's for the European market or the African market. All consumers deserve access to safe food. For African Diaspora Agrofood entrepreneurs, investing in this sector is much more than business. It is all about social enterprises that positively impact people, communities, and nations. Today, we have panelists in this forum with in-depth knowledge of Africa. They have the experience about African diasporas, entrepreneurship, the agro-food sector. So I'm hoping that this will provide a catalyst and opportunity that we need to create new strategies for change. Thank you very much. Thanks. And I hope you will have a good discussion with us. Thank you.
Thank you for that comprehensive overview, Maureen. Now we'd like to welcome Jutta Kleber, who is the Education Officer at the Meise Botanic Garden in Belgium, who has been a long-standing partner to Foodbridge on this project.
Good morning, everybody. In name of my institution, Meise Botanic Garden, in name of our Administrateur-Generaal Steven de Seyn, in name also of the head of the public department, Koen S., I would like to welcome you warmly to this 5th edition of the African Diaspora Agrofood Forum. Our head of research, Xavier Scheldeman, will welcome you personally because he will be one of the speakers that will talk to you today. As Jentel said, we have a tradition of 5 years of working together by now, and we are always very, very happy, or we were very happy to host the African Diaspora Food Forum on the location of the Botanic Garden. Not only because it's a beautiful environment, I think I can say that, but also because there are so many links between this place when it comes to the plants you can see in the glass houses, when it comes to the research done in our institution. There are so many links between the topic of today and our location. So we hope very much that next year we will be allowed again to welcome you in Meise Botanic Garden. But for those people who are in Belgium, who newly moved to Brussels, for instance, and who want to spend a nice Sunday, I can warmly invite you to our special day totally dedicated on food, 19th of September, where the African Diaspora Food Market will have a very special place. 15 people, 15 entrepreneurs, African Diaspora entrepreneurs, will have the occasion to show their activities and their products to a wide public, the public of our average Sunday visitors. And thus we hope that we can put in a positive way in the picture the African diaspora world that is so very unknown to many, many, many people in Belgium and I think in other countries in the world. So a warm welcome for those who are around, please. We start around 10 o'clock, but main activities will have place from around 2 in the afternoon. That will be the most interesting time to visit, I think. I think the program we present today is interesting in many ways. We will have examples of African diaspora entrepreneurs who will share with you their successes and their challenges. I think it's a very important part of this forum. We will have many speakers from the field of policy making, economics, funding, financing, which of course are amazingly important to create an enabling environment for the entrepreneurs. And last but not least, we have a section on innovation and research. And I think it's very interesting to see how creative minds and research can contribute to a great development of the agro-food sector and how new ideas grow and create new opportunities thanks to those people with creative and innovative minds. So I hope you will all enjoy the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jutta. Having set the policy context to start with, before we head into the field, which is the part that a lot of us enjoy, which is physically being on the farm and in different ACP countries or diaspora regions and discovering what we're all doing, which is the second session, we start with the first session, which is policy focused and trying to understand how can we re-strategize policy making in this post-COVID era. And it's especially important to have this debate, taking into consideration our discussion last year, which happened just as COVID was starting. And in that regard, I'm very pleased to welcome our first speaker, Assistant Secretary General at the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, Ffm Oliveira Gomez. And we hope especially that you can give us an overview of how you at the OACP Secretariat are strategizing for this post-COVID era that we're all still very uncertain about, and with the hindsight of our discussions last year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gentle. For me, it's a big honor to be here today. I am from the Caribbean, but I feel very much African. In fact, in a recent meeting between CARICOM and African heads of state, it was pronounced that the Caribbean was the fourth region of Africa, or fifth region of Africa, because the truth is that our similarities are very, very strong, and our friendship as well. So I would really want to thank Mr. Jeremy Knox, Mrs. Maureen Duru, and Mrs. Jutta Kleber for inviting us to be here today and sharing with you. I will present a presentation, so bear with me. If you can see it. So, oh, sorry. Should start there. So can you see the presentation, Gentle? Just say yes, okay.
Yes.
So thank you very much. We want to really thank our partners, the Footbridge at the African Diaspora Projects, Sankaa, the Botanic Garden Meise, that I have never been, but I will certainly go once I'm able to, COLEACP, and of course, the European Union, which is our long-standing partner. For those that do not know the ACP and those that don't visit our website every day, the OECPS is the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. We became an international organization in April 2020, and we evolved from the ACP group that was founded via the Georgetown Agreement in 1975. We're currently composed of 79 countries from Africa, Caribbean, and the Pacific, and we are proudly led by His Excellency, Mr. George Revelo Pinto Chicote, who is our Secretary General from Angola. As a group, we promote the sustainable development of our member states and the gradual integration into the global economy, with the ultimate objective of reducing and eventually eradicating poverty. In this quest for development, youth and women empowerment are at the center of all of our actions, among others because we consider it to be the future, and also to be really, many of our households really depend on women entrepreneurs. And the panel today shows that women entrepreneurs are very, very active. So we're very proud of our ACP women. The activities that we perform, at least in my area, which is private sector development, are framed within a joint OACPS European Union private sector development framework. And we have a four-pillar approach. The first thing we try to do is to improve the business environment, and we have several programs towards it. We try to strengthen intermediary organizations in our member states as a way to be able to foster inclusive development in the countries. We support SMEs, especially those from the informal sector and the smaller sectors, among others, through financial schemes. And we promote investments and loans through facilities that we have. As you can see in the left side, we have many, many partners that work with us in this quest. COLEACP is a very important one. Many United Nations agencies, the African Union, all the regional investment and development partners like COMESA, ECOWAS, CARICOM, and even the Tony Lumelo Foundation. So we have a very wide array of partners, and of course, and many of the partners that we work with are also European development agencies like the Agence Française de Développement and the Belgian Development Agency, ANABEL. All this strategy is based on several principles. The first one is to share best practices, which is what we're doing here today. I'm so very proud to be here today. Ensure market access, and I will talk a little bit about that because COLEACP is very much involved in ensuring market access for our products. Promote youth and women, I'll explain. And overall is dialogue. Is public and private sector dialogue and cooperation at all levels, at national level, regional level, and all ACPS level. This is the way that we try to work. And up to now has given, I think, relatively good results, but we always can do better. And we are here to learn as well from the entrepreneurs that can tell us how we can do better. Just to come back in COVID, I think that COVID, I wanted to say some guiding principles on COVID. I think the first thing is that we all have to recognize that this is not a crisis that can be successfully handled by one continent, region, country, or sector alone. We're all in this together. In this sense, the OECD heads of a government led by His Excellency, Mr. Kenyatta from Kenya, has had already many actions on this, on trying to discuss on policy. How can we have policy to help each other? Again, fostering public and private sector dialogue is the most important part. I won't say it enough. Another tendency that has arrived a lot in Europe that can also help us a lot is the trend of consuming products that are produced as close as possible from your home. This is very good. It was more or less also what Marine was explaining. Apart from us buying products from our countries, we also have to promote that our countrymen buy their own products. Unfortunately, many of our people, when they go to the supermarket in our own countries, we always believe that the foreign product is better than ours, and it's often not the case, because the truth is that even if OECD SMEs sometimes have problem in packaging, the quality of the products in general is very, very good. And that explains why I'm so fat, because I always, when I travel, I eat a lot of food in my countries. We also have to assist vulnerable groups with special programs, again, targeting youth, women, and underprivileged. And maybe, and I hope so, that this discussion here today allows us to go into that. Maybe this crisis will allow us to use leapfrog technology by our SMEs. This is something that we have to explore. And just wanted to mention that COLEACP had also, but I suppose COLEACP is going to talk about it, has a lot of systems like a COVID alert that I suppose you might know. And one of the challenges that our SMEs have had, and we have had many seminars around this since last year, seminars about the impact on tourism that you can find on YouTube, seminars about SME development, and seminars also with other institutions like the Investment Climate Reform Facility, which is led by the development agencies of the UK, France, the Netherlands, and Germany, sorry. So promoting a healthy working environment is difficult. How we maintain the workforce motivated, reaching out to consumers, especially given that it was difficult to reach out to them. There was a decline in global consumption, especially for those countries that depended a lot on tourism. We saw a lot of the local consumption also reduced because a lot of our farmers were selling to the hotels. The managing stock, given the disrupted supply chain, some of our, in my own country, even getting glass bottles became an issue at one moment because they were imported, generating trust in consumers. And I think that the most, or the sector that suffered the most in the pandemic was the informal sector. Because while a lot of our countries did put in place systems to assist SMEs through fiscal aid and other ones, the informal sector, because of its nature, couldn't. So that is one of the main issues that our countries have to face. How can we continue to support the informal sector when sometimes they cannot really go out and work? And also a big challenge for all of our countries that was recently mentioned really by Mrs. Mia Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados, was debt. A lot of our countries engage in a lot of debt to be able to ride the COVID wave. And we have to see how this debt will not really hamper a future development. So this is something also to be seen. We believe that this is the right time because big challenges bring great opportunities to have a paradigm shift. We have to have new development policies. These new development policies must address the needs and challenges confronted by our SMEs, targeting again vulnerable groups and people from ethnic minorities. In this, a diaspora could play a major role. We need to foster social, economic, cultural inclusion. This will not only ensure that we're really helping direct people, but we will build more prosperous, peaceful, and fair societies. I think this is the time really to start rethinking our development. And thinking of development, I think the main thing is quality. And in this sense, European Union and the OECPS, we have been working, for example, with the African Organization for Standardization, ARSO, and COLEACP in many initiatives, some of them will be presented here today, that seek to promote legislative reform, improve business climate, foster the understanding, adoption, and use of standards. Because our countries, our companies need also to understand the standards to be able to apply them. And I think that COLEACP will speak about today, the work that they're doing with Fit for Market. We have also to increase the technical capacity of our institution, associations, and producers. Again, the diaspora should play a big role in this because there's a lot of knowledge from the diaspora about these things. We hope that these actions contribute to enterprise competitiveness. And again, our main effort is to promote the social cohesion and economic inclusion. And at the same time, all this would also ensure that our consumers in Africa will have access to better goods. It always helps quality for export, also helps quality in the country. I wanted to touch a little bit on the ICT sector because this is also a main point, a main part of how the diaspora can help. Information and communication technologies represent an opportunity for a diaspora to participate in a more active manner in the development of our countries. We need to foster diaspora engagement with a view of strengthening our ICT networks, not only with investment, but also with knowledge, and provide incentives to stimulate the adoption of digital tools by SMEs. We do know that it is challenging in some cases when electricity prices or internet access are challenging, but this is something that we have to work in, even into subsidizing some of this for the smaller SMEs. We believe that with the adequate digital tools and improving the managerial and technical capacity of entrepreneurs, both in the diaspora and at home, it will allow them to efficiently contribute to the transformation of our communities, hopefully generate sustainable livelihoods, and strengthen economic and social cohesion, economic resilience and social cohesion. I would like also to make an appeal that we again have to believe in ourselves. Sometimes we, like I was saying before, we believe that everything that is foreign is better. I want to make an appeal for all those in the diaspora to embrace their cultural roots. I took the decision never again, at least during this job, to use a tie. So today I'm in African, but often I use a Dominican traditional clothing because we have to be proud of our roots. And I love how Gentle today is dressed as very ACP as well. Globalization has really changed the way we do business. Technological innovations have shrunk the dimension of spaces and time. And the fierce competition that we have had in the regional markets has coupled with us opening our own markets and having more competition in home. And that's challenging all of our SMEs to find innovative solutions to survive. What we propose is to reestablish our competitiveness in that special thing, that je ne sais pas quoi, that defined us. We want to help you translate the where, what, and how into authentic stories that you can target to consumers, supplying the world with unique products and services. This is our goal, and we hope to help you do that. What do I mean? Where is the market segments in which you might have a competitive advantage? Those would be niche, luxury, free trade, organic, diaspora healthy. This COLEACP is working in part of this. Our SMEs need to understand the trends and expectation of consumers in those target markets. And you, the diaspora, will be the best person, because you're in-house in some of those target markets, to educate people. When you go to the supermarket and you have 100 coffees being sold, is the coffee that catches your eye. If they're all the same, It's like when I was younger, I used to go out. When you choose a partner, I'm happily married. It at the beginning has to do with the package, and then it's the inside that counts. The what is the products and services that we offer. We cannot compete in price and volumes, because competing always in low prices or huge volumes really makes your competitiveness too shallow. We have to compete in quality and specificity. We have to adapt our products to the needs of target mass markets. Labeling, packaging, taste and standards are very important. You don't sell coffee the same way in Japan that you would sell in Europe. The packaging has to be different. You have to adapt, and you get a prime for that. What we propose is to sell a story and provide a dream to your consumer. How is really basically providing a good value proposition. Your goods and services that Diaspora or Home will produce have to be accessible, have to be appealing. For me, the most important, they have to be authentic. Why is this product really good? Blue Mountain coffee from Jamaica is one of the best examples. I'm sorry to go back to my region, but there are so many examples in Africa, like biltong from Botswana is also something that I really like. It has to be consistent, because once you buy a package, the next time you buy it, it cannot be different. And this is where quality and standardization comes in. It has to be convenient. It has to represent convenience. So it has to have the quality I said. It has to be secure, of course, that's standards. And you have to have a volume adequate to your market. That does not mean that you have to have huge volumes. But for example, something when I was in the Caribbean, we used to promote selling in China. But when we promoted selling in China, it was never sold to China. It was to sell to a specific region or a city in China. Because if you try to go all over a humongous country, you would not be able to supply. So your volume has to be adapted to the market you're targeting. With this, I know I speak too much. Like always, I just wanted to say that together with the European Union and our partners here today, the OECPS, under the leadership of our Secretary General, Mr. Chicote, we're trying to promote competitiveness, working at a national level. The diaspora has to work in this part. Hopefully, promoting regional markets. We're very proud on how the regional markets are being strengthening. Trying to build this dream of an African continental free trade area, and we're also supporting that. We hope that we foster more interregional ACP trade, or when I say interregional, I mean trade between Africa and the Caribbean. It's fifth region, Africa and the Pacific, the Caribbean and the Pacific. Unfortunately, that trade is quite small. And hopefully, all together, we will conquer the world. Having said that, thank you very much. Gracias, merci, danke, shukran, jarejov, asante, vinaka, obrigado. And sorry for having taken so long.
Thank you very much, Ffm. It's always a pleasure to hear you speak, and those powerful messages about believing in ourselves and embracing our culture. And next, I would like to invite the Delegate General of COLEACP, Jeremy Knox, who has been supporting the work of Food Bridge and ACP exporters for quite some time with the COLEACP organization. Jeremy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Yentil. I'll try to live up to expectations after such a brilliant presentation from Ffm. Many things that have been said. I will try to touch base on a couple of them. But first of all, of course, welcome to everybody. Of course, to fellow panelists, but also all participants from all over the world. And special thanks, of course, to Maureen for driving the entire process, the entire initiative, and this annual gathering, which is growing every year in terms of importance. I'll try to structure the intervention around three main dimensions. First of all, try to share with you about COLEACP, who we are, what we do, how we do it. Then maybe a couple of words of how that work can be more interlinked, specifically with the diaspora, and then go back maybe to try to go back to your question and the question that is addressed to all of us as panelists in terms of re-strategizing the policy making. Although, of course, as an organization, it's not directly our role, but we can contribute and we can share ideas and inputs. Because COLEACP, and that's the starting point, I think, we're not profit organization, an association of private sector operators, created in the 70s. And our members today are producers, processors, traders, but of fruit and veg, mainly products throughout Africa, Caribbean, Pacific countries, but also EU importers. There's this very strong link between the EU market and ACP countries, but also other types of operators linked to fruit and veg and more broadly agri-food value chains. And all these members are together because, of course, they share a mission of supporting sustainable and inclusive production and trade of agri-food products within Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific countries, between Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific countries, and between ACP countries and other markets, amongst which, of course, the EU, for a number of reasons, is one of the most important. As an association, of course, we have the typical life of an association in terms of attempting to fostering more links between our members, but our role has evolved over the years, and I would say that started really 20 years ago, and mainly that's thanks to the trust and support of the Organization of the Africa, Caribbean, Pacific States and the EU, which saw in COLEACP 20 years ago a potential vehicle to work more closely with operators throughout ACP countries to support their compliance initiatives with market requirements. And that really started beginning of the years 2000 on a number of food safety issues. And I'm not going to be too technical, but here the main idea, of course, is say that as an association, we've evolved, and of course, statutes are still those of an association, but really thanks to these partnerships and the trust of institutions such as the OECPS, the EU, and today also other international organizations, we've become really a technical assistance tool, investing on a daily basis in activities on the ground throughout 50 countries with MSMEs, with professional associations, with competent authority bodies, with universities, really with a whole range of stakeholders who are involved in the development of fruit and veg value chains more specifically, because we do have a focus on fruit and veg, and that's basically who we are today. What we do, Escipion talked about it. It's a lot about market access, and I think the last slide from Escipion summarizes a lot and very well the systemic and holistic approach we encourage, of course, everybody to have in mind. It is about facilitating access on domestic, regional, but also international markets, with complementarity between all these markets in terms of market positioning, and in terms of course, market segments that can be reached, and it's facilitating market access by working on all the compliance-related issues. So, of course, a number of regulatory requirements to reach any type of market, and one of the areas when we talk about regulatory requirements, of course, we need to look at sanitary and phytosanitary elements. That's one of them, but also increasingly on social empowerment, on environmental protection. These are elements which are by the day becoming progressively more forged within a number of standards and progressively regulations, and we attempt to do that within a sustainable framework. How do we translate that in practice? What does it mean for a small company or a cooperative from Côte d'Ivoire or from Cameroon or for any country in sub-Saharan Africa? It means that basically we start out usually so that there's an application for support which is sent to us, and at the moment we're capable of intervening, again, thanks to intervention programs. Scipion mentioned, these are called Ffm programs, which are intra-ACP programs mandated by the OACPS and the EU, but also the French Development Agency. So we send an application for support, and we build an action plan together with the company, with the cooperative, and we define a number of actions in terms of coaching, training, consultancy to support really the implementation of the processes and the required steps to be undertaken in order to be able to upgrade and reach a certification or whatsoever type of requirement which is needed to sell the product. But when we do that, it's about restructuring over time, of course, the entity, and it's making sure that the element of competitiveness is always there. I think, again, building up on what has been said by Scipion, it's absolutely essential when looking, of course, at the sustainability of agri-food systems. This economic dimension cannot be forgotten. And of course, when we talk about sustainability, it's social, environmental, but it's also first and foremost on the economical side. And this is valid for agriculture worldwide. There has been an issue over the years on how revenues, of course, are shared within the value chain and the lack of economic value that has been put historically on the production side. This is an issue, and it's still an issue today, where more value has to be brought back at production level. But also more broadly, it's about this overall thinking, okay, how can I compete on which type of markets? How can I make my activity economically viable? And that reasoning is different, being on the fresh, on the processed side of the sector, or being on the domestic, regional, or international market. But we try to bring back every single activity that is going to be performed together to a cost-benefit analysis for the entity, because it's not about embarking on a kind of development journey which economically is not viable. That in the long run would not be sustainable. And so the how we operate on a daily basis has been about building over the years an entire network of trainers, of experts throughout the 50 countries who are today in a position to work with MSMEs, with local professional associations, with competent authorities to work on all those aspects in the long run. I'd say, and that's going to be linked to later on part of what I want to say in the post-COVID environment. But really remind that as COLEACP on the why we have a number of members together, on the why international organizations and institutions trust us as an association of private sector players, is of course the recognition of the importance of the agri-food sector in terms of today contributing to a number of sustainable development goals, amongst which, of course, food security and food nutrition, but also in terms of poverty reduction, and also in terms of environmental overall protection. And this is something that, of course, for us at COLEACP is extremely important. And in the recent months and weeks, there were a number of reports and studies published about how we've potentially miscalculated the overall impact of agriculture on the environment, and more specifically on climate change, and notably of some subsectors of the agricultural sector. Clearly, agriculture has this huge role and responsibility when we look at the overall environmental sustainability of the planet. Now, to come more specifically on the diaspora as a stakeholder, but as an integrated stakeholder, as an association. I mentioned some of our members are within the European Union, the majority are located in Africa, Caribbean, Pacific countries. I think and I've already said it previous years during several interventions, but one of our challenges, and Maureen mentioned it during the introductory words, we look at diaspora, that there are several potential roles, and which are of course not mutually exclusive. I mean, Maureen mentioned diaspora as consumers of produce coming directly in this case from Africa, as potential investors, but also as potential business partners, as potential entrepreneurs, and I would like to add also as potential trainers, experts, linking again back to the ICT slide of Ffm on this role, and we see this really as a collection of potential roles, and it's going to be about maximizing of course, in function of where we want to go. It goes without saying that there's this recognition and increased recognition of the importance of having diaspora as a formal kind of stakeholder group around the thinking process, and most importantly in the action of driving the transformation of the agri-food sector in Africa. Now, if you allow me, I'll finish maybe with a couple of words on COVID-19. When the pandemic emerged, we basically had two, I would say, a two-pronged approach. Of course, in the first case, it was about a huge disruption, as nobody has really witnessed or lived throughout their lives. And when comes probably the scale, I mean, the type of event or disruption on this level, on this scale, of course, in the first instance, it's about attempting to contribute to mitigate some of the direct negative impacts. And some of the direct negative impacts, there were different types of impacts. Of course, logistics were completely disrupted, and traditional routes to access markets with huge impacts, of course, being on an informal, but also on a number of formal markets. It was about, of course, within the entire sanitary environment, looking also at how some local companies could also play a role in, first and foremost, of course, implementing precautionary sanitary measures, but also play a leading role in explaining to the communities associated to those companies on how the precautionary measures, why and how they had to be implemented. So that's on the one hand, and of course, linked to these disruptions and new processes to set in place within the MSMEs. It's about adapting and managing a very tight cash flow situation, and so it's about new type of business skills that have to be there within the entities to be able to absorb, to the extent it's possible, to absorb an impact of this magnitude. And so in the short term, that has been really our priority during the first 12 months. And I'll say post-COVID, well, we're still in the COVID situation, unfortunately. So we see a situation which varies immensely between countries within the same continent, and of course between continents of the world. So I would consider that we're still, of course, within the pandemic, but at a different stage of the pandemic at the moment. But so the mental framework was about to mitigate some of the direct negative impacts, and in order to do so, to mitigate it, it's immediately about adapting and trying to find some new opportunities, alternatives in the short, medium, long term. And in the short term, we're talking about, okay, for companies that are producing a lot of fresh produce and can't bring it to the market, it's about trying to find very simple ways to process that food in order not to lose everything. That's a tangible example of what I mean by saying to try to adapt, but we're talking about adaptation in a couple of weeks, a couple of months. So it's extremely challenging, of course, from an economic operators, but it is not impossible. But then we're looking at more in the medium to long term, and yes, there is a systemic impact of this entire situation, which impacts international trade, which impacts, but not only in a negative way. And I think one of our challenges is to try to find the impacts which do have a positive twist and provide new opportunities in terms of new distribution channels, being on the local, regional, and international markets, new ways to conduct commercial prospections and establish new contacts with potential business partners. I think we all trust much more technology today, and although we can find it sometimes annoying, of course, of spending so much time behind our screens, it also offers the opportunity. At some point during the pandemic, we felt even more connected with the entire network within COLEACP and beyond with our partners than pre-pandemic because of technology. And so there are business opportunities that can be linked to this. And of course, it's making sure that there's an acceleration in the uptake of some much needed research outputs. Because of course, beyond the pandemic and the sanitary situation, there's this in the that's there, and we're reminded every month of the impacts of climate change, and climate change on agriculture has immensely huge impacts. And so there's a kind of different levels of challenges which need to be dealt with at the same time, which requires some more innovation, more thinking out of the box, but of course more skills, more training on a systemic basis in the long run. And to conclude, of course, I think everybody here today is convinced about the importance and how important it is to work within the agri-food sector, and how many boxes it can tick when looking at sustainable development goals and how many positive benefits. But, and there's a but, within the worldwide agenda, we should not lose sight of, and that would be maybe one suggestion, one recommendation, of the importance of reminding this, even if it seems so obvious to many people. There are many other global challenges, and of course, the sanitary situation, security issues, which also can potentially have an impact on overall resources available to invest in the agricultural sector, which I believe is almost a public good sector for everybody. So in terms of policy making, of course, there's what's specific to within the agri-food sector, and specific depending on the types of markets and value chains, the priorities we're trying to look at, and we need to look at them in a complementary way. But if we take a step back, there's agriculture, then there are a number of other big issues worldwide at the moment, which drive a lot of the political attention and resources. And we need to make sure that we remind everybody of the importance of agriculture. So that's from my side. Oh yeah, I was also a bit long, probably following Esipion's example. Thank you, Yentil.
Thank you, Jeremy, for that comprehensive overview of the work of COLEACP, the vital work of COLEACP supporting ACP exporters as mandated by the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States. Next, I have the honor of presenting Maxi Ubede, who has been head of the ACP desk during a crucial time of transition from the Cotonou period to the post-Cotonou period, representing the Embassy of Nigeria. Maxi, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Yetta. Thank you for inviting us. But first, let me, on behalf of His Excellency, Ambassador Binna, thank the organizers of this great event. We want to thank the Food Bridge, Dr. Morinduru, Juta Kleber, and other partners who have put this event together. It's indeed a very timely event. It's coming at a very right time. Let me express the regrets of His Excellency for not being able to participate personally due to some other pre-scheduled engagements. He would have wished to be here in person to present this. However, we're very happy, the Embassy of Nigeria is very happy to be part of this discussion. The discussions around re-strategizing policies in the agro-food sector as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic could not have been held at a much better time than now, when economies around the world are seeking to bounce back from the negative effects of the impacts of the pandemic. And of course, as you know, so many economies went into recession. Nigeria was not left out. We also had our time in recession due to the effects of the pandemic. It did not just affect the agro-business, it affected so many other businesses. So agri-business, like most other businesses, suffered the effects of the global pandemic. The consequences being that Africa and of course many other countries of the world were left with the challenge of food security. For a country like mine, like Nigeria with a huge population of about 200 million people, insecurity in food could have very dire consequences. And of course, it became obvious that the government of the day had to really brave up and begin to re-strategize and rethink policies towards preventing what would have been a global disaster in food shortage. So the federal government of Nigeria had to take proactive steps to ameliorate the impact of the global pandemic on agriculture and food, the agro-food sector in particular. I would say that the first thing we did, of course, the government did not waste time to introduce policies that would prevent food shortage in the country. The government quickly launched an economic recovery plan early by putting in place certain measures, such as a clear economic sustainability plan in response to the challenges posed by the COVID-19, provided physical and monetary stimulus packages, including support for private businesses, with emphasis on strategic sectors most affected by the pandemic. Of course, this included, but not limited to, the agro-food sector and vulnerable sectors of the population. Government introduced monetary policies, measures in support of their plans, and adopted clear-cut strategies to help sustain existing jobs and create opportunities for new ones. Of course, everybody knows that at that point, so many jobs had to go under, so many producers could not undertake their businesses. It was a trying time for businesses generally, and government had to really step in to provide a shock absorber for most of them. And in specific times, on specific response to the agro-food sector, the federal government established at that time, and I think that task force is still in place, a task force to assist the movement of agro-food sector, inputs and produce. The team ensured that free and unhindered movement for farmers during the lockdown. Based on the effects of the COVID pandemic on farmers, the federal government approved an intervention fund of close to $34.2 million for pest control, because at that same time we had wide locusts coming from East Africa and the Middle East migrating towards West Africa. So we had to take mitigating measures to ensure that the locusts did not compound our problem. The government introduced the then and what has become the Nigerian Economic Sustainability Plan, NESP. It is itself a robust plan, which was developed by the Nigerian Economic Sustainability Committee, chaired by our Vice President, Mr. Yemi Oshibajo. The plan itself made provision of $5.9 billion as a transition program targeted at specific sectors that contribute to the growth of the economy. Of course, that included, but not limited to, the agro-food sector. The stimulus package, which is aimed at preventing businesses from collapsing and staving off the worst impacts of a global recession. Of course, that helped a lot of agri-business and smallholders to absorb the shock. It provided them a pool of funds to be able to continue to do business even within the pandemic. So we do believe that such strategies did help and will continue to help post-COVID to sustain the agri and agro-food sector. The government also provided for vulnerable groups like women and people with other abilities, as are disabled persons, with different kinds of interventions. One can talk about the Mass Agricultural Program, MAP, with an estimated budget of $1.6 billion to help make sure that agriculture, we had mass agricultural produce and farmers were not left to their own device. Government also put in place some tax incentives for agribusiness operators to help stay for foreign competition. Of course, you know that with the mass import, the kind of imports we get, local producers, of course, are disadvantaged. We're a country where almost all kind of food coming from the rest parts of the world. And of course, it is big competition for small holders and small producers. So they needed tax incentives to be able to compete globally. And the government provided that for them. And I think that's still ongoing. Other plans put in place include loan repayment moratorium for farmers and interest rates reduction to help support the agribusiness. So those in agribusiness, I know that currently you can get very low interest loans from the banks in Nigeria to help you grow your business. Another very robust program put in place is the Anchor Borrowers Program. It is an initiative of the Central Bank of Nigeria, and it creates a linkage between agro-processors and small-holder farmers through the provision of funding for selected agri-business and cultural commodities. This increases the CBN's credit financing of agribusiness from a global fund of 220 billion naira from the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise Development Fund. So this fund is targeted at so many of our cash products and for agribusiness entrepreneurs to get the fund to grow their business. A lot of farmers, a lot of those in the agri sector in Nigeria would tell you that the Anchor Borrowers Program has actually given a lifeline to their businesses, and it's still open to so many other businesses to key into it. I need to add here that these programs and policies of government are not only for those in Nigeria, they are also targeted at Nigerians in the diaspora. Many Nigerians in the diaspora have already keyed in and taken advantage of these interventions to grow their agro food businesses to Nigeria. So many have relocated, so many have moved to Nigeria. Others have formed partnerships with local collaborators in Nigeria to add value to their businesses. I therefore would like to encourage the Nigerians in Europe and in Belgium to link up with the relevant agencies and institutions in Nigeria to see how they can benefit from these robust intervention programs so as to grow their agri-businesses. I will end by calling on you in the diaspora to bring back your technology-driven strategy for agro-food processing. You have the access to technology, and this is the much needed technology we need back home to help the smallholders, the small local smallholder farmers to be able to add value to their products and increase the agri-business in Nigeria. So once again, I invite you to key into the federal government programs. This is the only way we can jointly sustain the agro-food sector, both here in the diaspora and in Nigeria. The strategies are on ground, the policies are there, the intervention funds are there. Bring back the technologies. I think we need those technologies which you have unfettered access to key in and help smallholder farmers to add value to their businesses. Let me stop here for the moment to allow other participants to make their submissions. I want to thank you for listening to us, and we hope in the course of the day, we would have more interactive and exchanges. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maxi, for that overview of the new initiatives put in place by the government of Nigeria, and also for your call to Diaspora to assist with the transitions, especially with regards to agriculture. It now gives me great pleasure to present the next speaker, Mr. Rashad Al-Kafaji, who is the Director of the FAO Liaison Office to the EU and Belgium.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see my screens and you can see the slides. Very good. So let me start by thanking the panelists before me. I have the honor to be here at this panel with the Assistant Secretary General of the Structural Economic Transformation and Trade of the OECPS, Mr. Oliveira Gomez. I thank also Jeremy Knox, the General Delegate from COLEACP, who has spoken, Ms. Maureen Duru. I thank the representative of the Ambassador of Nigeria to Belgium, who spoke before me. And I also want to greet Ms. Jutta Kleber from the Meise Botanical Gardens, our host. She certainly raised my interest and curiosity to come and visit the Botanical Gardens soon. And I'm also greeting Ms. Karin Nsudu, the Director of the Africa-Europe Diaspora Development Platform, ADAF. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I am very honored to be representing here the Food and Agriculture Organization. It is really an important element for us to join in events like this one, and I am looking forward to very vital and important discussions here at this event. Let me start by giving you a quick overview over something that we've heard within the interventions of the panelists so far was the matter of paradigm shift and focusing on the important elements that we need to make the changes that are required to get to the 2030 agenda. From our side at FAO, we had at our FAO General Conference, the ministerial highest governing body of the organization in July of this year, the adoption of a new strategic framework for the organization. This new strategic framework goes for the next decade, or like in FAO's jargon, for the next 9 seasons of harvest, because there is not much left between us and the year 2030, where the international community has pledged to make fundamental changes and improvements and transformations to the world as a whole. We focus the 4 betters as our, let's say, tangible, correct points of entry to support the 2030 agenda. And we do this to transform our agri-food systems, making them more efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. And we do this with these 4 betters, which are better production, better nutrition, better environment, and a better life. You will see that these are linked in a very concrete manner to every activity and policy and every approach that FAO is holding. And you see this exemplified here, where if you look at the red, which is the better life, you will see the rural power, women's empowerment, rural transformation, urban food systems and the importance of linking them, the agriculture and food emergencies and how to deal with them, the importance of building resilient agri-food systems, our hand-in-hand initiative, to which I will come back later with a few words, and scaling up investment. When it comes to better production, we have to also make sure that we have the One Health approach, which is a global approach that links the different aspects of health. And we are currently chairing the tripartite of One Health, which is between the OIE, which deals with veterinary medicine, with the WHO and the FAO. Together with UNEP, we're trying to have a global action plan on One Health. There's the blue transformation, which has to do not only with the aquatic production of food, but also with everything that has to do with the shores and with the villages that are at the seaside, with the production that can be done there, with increasing the value of produce that comes from there. Digital agriculture, which is for us an incredibly important innovative approach where we need to see, and I've heard the term leapfrogging technologies being used today already. This is something where we cannot overestimate its importance. And I think many people here in Europe do not understand how far ahead some African countries are already with using digital technologies. The next thing are small-scale producers and their importance, as well as green innovations. Coming to nutrition, we focus a lot on healthy diets because it's not enough that we ensure a caloric intake by population. We need to make sure that this diet is healthy. Healthy diets also don't mean the same thing for everybody at the different stages of our life in different health situations. So that again is something that we are focusing on. The nutrition for the most vulnerable is another element that is of importance. The food safety, which comes back to a lot of things that have to do with markets and trades as well. We need to make sure that food safety standards are central in our thinking, because this is the only way to ensure also that exportation could be done. And obviously a very important element for us is food loss and waste. Latest numbers on food loss and waste talk about 30% of global food production being lost or wasted. Just to give you a quick differentiation. So when we talk of food losses, everything that happens from the field until the product arrives at the supermarket. So the whole chain of cold chain, of transportation, of storage, there approximately half of those 30% are lost. The other half is what we waste, which is basically from the moment it arrives in the supermarket, either that it is thrown away by the supermarket or by the food industry, by restaurants, caterers, and so on, or by households. And there again, there is so much that could be done, because we all agree that this is not only an ethical problem, a moral problem, but it's also an economic problem. And it is also an environmental problem, because when we throw away food that has been produced, we're also throwing away the labor, the energy, the natural resources, the water that were used for it. Let me quickly go also to the environment. So there we are also working about the links between agri-food systems and the climate, because we do know that agriculture is a big contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Not only when we talk of agriculture, we also include in it, of course, livestock, animals, but at the same time, it is part of the solution. So we need to make sure that this is also taken into consideration. There are the elements of bioeconomy and ecosystems and biodiversity, because if we do not protect our ecosystems and our biodiversity, this has a direct impact on our food security as well. As you see, there are all these things that are pretty linked together. Let me quickly go to COVID-19. I will not go into the details of this slide. I invite any interested participants to look at our website, where we have plenty of information on this. Let me just say a few words about our approach to COVID-19 from the start. From its onset, our Director General and our core leadership wanted to ensure that awareness is raised on the fact that if we do not handle the health crisis, it will become a food crisis. Why do we say that? Because a lot of the measures that were undertaken to tackle and to address the health crisis had direct impacts on food production. Farmers were impeded from bringing their produce to the markets. Open markets were closed. Many elements of the agricultural production that are in the informal sector, and we heard this today already from previous panelists, the informal sector suffered strongly. Many of them work in the agricultural sector, and in their high proportion were affected, lost their jobs, lost their livelihoods. This automatically affected also not only demand for food, therefore also the production that is there. It also affected farmers who had to start eating and consuming their own product instead of making sure that they have enough seeds for the next season of planting, which means that the cycle of agricultural production was interrupted. There are many things that could be said about the effects of COVID-19 on food security, on the agri-food sector. But let me just say that we have a program that was put together by FAO. It's the Response and Recovery Plan. It is built on those 7 elements that you see here. So there's a global humanitarian response plan, there's the element of data and needing the analysis of this data to make the right decisions. The economic inclusion and social protection. Social protection plays an important role, and we've heard about sums of money that are being given in order to ensure that not only in cash only, but in protection as a whole. Again, we come back to trade and food safety standards, because we need to accelerate those, and we need to make sure that the international trade of food remains open. Then obviously boosting the resilience of smallholders, helping them in their recovery. Preventing the next zoonotic pandemic. This is again where I spoke about One Health and the approach of linking between animal health and human beings' health. And obviously the food systems transformation as a whole. And this links strongly with the United Nations Summit, where the pre-summit was held in Rome not too long ago, and where at the end of this month we will see the summit in New York. This is grosso modo the elements that we use for the COVID-19 response and recovery plan. Let me quickly mention the Food Coalition. This is an initiative of the Italian government together with some other interested partners, where they use this coalition to provide political support, to provide technical expertise, and to provide financial support to the response and recovery of COVID-19. I am also quickly going to speak with you about the hand-in-hand initiative, because it links very much with what we are talking about here, about what the diaspora can do and how it can link with it. The hand-in-hand initiative is a evidence-based, country-led and country-owned initiative. It aims to accelerate the agricultural transformation, and it basically tackles ending hunger and eradicating poverty, which are SDGs 1 and 2. But by doing that, and we all are absolutely cognizant that if people are hungry and if they are so poor, all the other SDGs will not work. They are the basis. We need them in order to be sure that we can also achieve the other SDGs. This new form of a initiative is built on strong implication of the country itself. It identifies within the country parts, regions that are the most susceptible to having a positive impact to investment. And FAO plays the role of the matchmaker. We heard already today of our first speaker about going out and finding the right partner in life and looking at the outside and then at the package and then at the inside. What we do is very similar in our matchmaking. We link donors and financial partners with countries by providing them with geospatial data, by analysis of this big data, and we combine a very big amount of databases, and all these databases flow together and give a picture about each region, about the data that exists on it in terms of animals, agriculture, weather, health, population, and so on, in order to provide the best basis for an informed decision. At the moment, we have this initiative in 45 countries. 26 from them are in Africa. There is a very, very strong element about the geospatial modeling and the big data analysis in there that is very important, because we are trying to link it and make it open and accessible for everybody to look at. If you go to our website, you will be able to pick the country that you want and look at all the data that is available there. For the time being, we have about 40,000 users from all FAO members of this geospatial platform. We have worked together with Google and created the Earth map, which is sort of the layers of Google Earth that go on top of all this data to make it visually even more accessible and understandable. The other, and I could go on a lot about this initiative, but I think that I just wanted to give you some ideas about it, and I hope that any interest I have raised, then we can either directly discuss, or you can have a look at the wealth of information we have on our webpage on it. The other element that I also wanted to quickly talk about is the 1,000 Digital Villages initiative. And here, the idea is to focus on digital technologies to improve production and agribusiness management and related market-oriented and social services of agriculture processes. So With e-agriculture, we want to improve the productivity, so using information and communication tools, ICTs, and relevant digital solutions which exist. And again, we need to remember that the leapfrogging that was already mentioned today plays a central role in that aspect. The digital farmer services are there to enhance the farmer's accessibility to social and economic services. There we are trying to bridge between the rural and the urban area. We need to make sure that if a farmer somewhere in a village has access to the latest information, has access to veterinary and extension services via digital services, has access to price information, we are changing the life of these farmers, and we are changing the way that these rural areas look like. And that is an extremely important element in the whole development process. Let me now go to zoom in a little bit on migration and FAO's work on migration. So FAO focuses on rural migration, so from and to and between rural areas. We need to always remember that a large share of migrants come from rural areas. It's the overwhelming majority. Hence, migration has an impact on agricultural subsectors and rural areas in the country of origin in all ways. Many of the drivers and impacts of migration are closely linked to our mandate and to the global goals of eradicating hunger, food security, and rural poverty. And therefore, it is absolutely clear that any plan that tackles the challenges, opportunities, all the facets of migration must always take into account its agriculture and rural dimension. Because we need responses that are multi-sectoral, that have a broad multi-stakeholder partnership approach, as was already also mentioned by our esteemed panelists before. Now, when we talk about the migration that we want to enhance, we are looking at it from various angles. Among our thematic areas of work on migration, we want to increase efforts towards enhancing the positive impacts of migration for agriculture and rural development. And that includes very strongly the engagement with diaspora. So for instance, at the global level, we advocate for the key role played by diaspora communities through participation in relevant fora, such as this one, and also partnerships with organizations such as the Africa-Europe Diaspora Development Platform, ADEPT. We signed a formal collaboration with ADEPT 2 years ago, and we launched a campaign about diaspora contributions to COVID-19 recovery, which is also a very important part of this collaboration. I'm honored to be joined in this panel by ADEPT Director, Ms. Nsudu. At country level, FAO aims to facilitate diaspora contributions to home countries, because the contributions that come from the diaspora need to be facilitated. They need to be given the assurance that their contribution has a strong impact, has also a benefit for them. Nobody deals only with an altruistic motive. We know that there needs to be a strong benefit also in terms of what are the outcomes, what is the current situation of the policies, what is the current situation of norms and standards, and so on. Our work is at the country level very close to, you could talk about a bridge between the diaspora organizations and between rural stakeholders in the country. So on the one hand, we work to create an enabling environment that harnesses diaspora potential, and that is very, very important. We want to strengthen policy dialogue, coordinate and strengthen coordination across key sectors, stakeholders. We also want to develop and strengthen technical and functional capacities on diaspora engagement mechanisms in the agribusinesses itself in the countries. On the other hand, we also work with the diaspora agripreneurs and the communities, because we want to empower them as agents of development. Their role is fundamental and might be, in many cases, underestimated. So this work entails a wide range of interventions, such as strengthening the diaspora representation and policy dialogue. We heard in the introduction from Maureen that the voice was not heard. This is something that certainly needs to be changed. We bring this voice to policy consultations as much as possible. We're setting up or supporting existing diaspora networks in agribusiness. We're strengthening diaspora-led projects and businesses in agriculture in their countries of origin through capacity building. We're also also facilitating diaspora investments in agribusiness through the organization of relevant summits and conventions. And we are facilitating diaspora skills and knowledge transfer through the organization and the rollout of mentorships. Now, let me give you a small example, Uganda. So in Uganda, we work on creating income generating opportunities in agribusiness by tapping into the entrepreneurial potential of the diaspora, and also by fostering dialogue and strengthening capacity of relevant stakeholders. We have an FAO project that is going on about strengthening capacity and harnessing positive effects of migration that is ongoing. Among the results achieved so far, we have managed to strengthen the policy dialogue and the coordination with the diaspora there. And this happens across key sectors. We organize workshops, we raise awareness on diaspora contributions to the rural employment by participating in national radio talk shows, regional campaigns, and the active role in the national coordination mechanism on migration that exists in Uganda. We designed and organized the first Uganda Diaspora Agrofood Investment Conference and the Ugandan Diaspora Agribusiness Investor Award, which brought together about 200 participants, and it recognized 5 Ugandan Diaspora Agripreneurs winners. I'm particularly happy to see that 2 of these award winners will be with us today. We are having FAO support in a financial and a technical aspect to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in their revision and validation of their national diaspora policy, because you need to have the right rules, the right approaches in order to give the security also for diaspora to come back and to invest. We've signed a collaboration with a diaspora-led organization to set up the first Ugandan Diaspora Agribusiness Network. We're in the process of organizing a series of dialogues bringing together national migration and rural stakeholders and diaspora to discuss around main challenges and solutions of investing in agribusiness. And we will be organizing a forum aimed at fostering agribusiness matching between diaspora investors, agripreneurs, and Ugandan youth entrepreneurs. Because again, here, youth plays an extremely important role. Now, I wanted to quickly finish, and I hope I didn't speak too much, with a couple of points that I think are of importance. One is that when speaking about youth, there is the World Food Forum, which is a youth-led movement and a network to transform food systems. And they will have their major event between the 1st and 5th of October. And I would strongly invite you to go on FAO's website and from there go to the sites where you can see everything that youth organizations are doing. This will be a major event that deals with achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and in particular zero hunger, and give youth the voice that is so much needed, because at the end of the day, it is their future and it is their planet that they will be having. I also wanted to give you a few, I know that we will share this presentation, so a few links that might be of use. The first one is on what we do on migration, which is only a glimpse of it was what was in my presentations today. The other one is what our FAO Brussels office does. So if you want to know about everything that we do in linking all kinds of civil society, on linking with the EU institutions, in linking with Belgian authorities, you will see it on our website, you'll see it on our monthly newsletter and in our Twitter. So do stay in touch and follow us. This is one of the advantages of today's digital world, that we have access to all this information and it's out there. Finally, let me just add, being myself part of a diaspora, I know what it means to be able to build back in their own country and to build up the link to our countries. It is more than talking about business or agribusiness or something. It is part of our soul, our origins, our heritage. It's part of us that is linked to there, and growing something there means that something is also growing in us. And in that sense, I'm absolutely convinced that when everybody adds firewood, the flames of the bonfire will be high, and the lights will show us the way to a better tomorrow for all of us. From FAO's side, we will continue standing proudly side by side with Africa. We will support the transformation in Africa to more efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agri-food systems for better production, for a better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life, leaving no one behind. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Al-Kafaji. That was a powerful presentation outlining the work of FAO across the new strategic plan, as you said, over the 9 harvests to come, which is very important, as well as including diaspora and youth constituents. I personally am very excited for the agricultural diaspora networks that are forthcoming and look forward to them also being spread out across other ACP regions. It now gives me great honor to present Karim Nsudu, who is the Executive Director of ADAF, the African Diaspora Europe platform. And here we will have a very powerful insight also, particularly on the diaspora programs being run. Thank you, Karim.
Thank you very much, Chantil. So I'm really honored to share this platform with such distinguished panelists, and I would like to thank the organizers, especially the Food Bridge, for inviting ADEPT to this major event. And for those who don't know ADEPT, so we are a network of Europe-based African diaspora organizations that conduct development activities in Africa and diversity and inclusion actions in Europe. So we think that the African Diaspora Agrofood Forum is a very important event. It's very timely because it puts under the spotlight the significant role played by the African diaspora in agriculture-related issues that are key for the development, especially the sustainable development of the African continent, especially in this very challenging COVID-19 context. So for us, this event is also testament to the shift underway when it comes to the engagement of the African diaspora, because for a very long time, the African diaspora contribution to the development of Africa has been wrongly limited to remittances. And while we know that remittances exceed development aid, we know that they are a lifeline for many African households and communities. It is manifest that African diaspora engagement is manifold, it is multifaceted, and that the diversity of the African diaspora capital has to be leveraged. Its social, human, and financial capital must be harnessed. And when it comes to diaspora economic contribution, they indeed takes the form of remittances, but not only. And we see increased diaspora investment and increased venture of the African diaspora into entrepreneurship. And in order to harness this potential and to maximize diaspora engagement, several levers have been identified, and we have presented them in a reflection paper that we have recently produced with the UN agency in charge of migration, so IOM, and 2 other organizations. And the first one is the importance to institutionalize channels of collaborations with diaspora organizations and individuals. The second one is the fact that diaspora organizations must be seen as development actors in their own right. And the third one is linked to the necessity to enhance the capacities of the diaspora. And this applies to diaspora engagement in general, but it's also relevant to its engagement in agriculture. And this was illustrated by some of the recommendations that were formulated during a roundtable that we co-organized with FAO in April 2021 on the African diaspora role in the post-COVID-19 rural recovery. As mentioned before, in the framework of a partnership that we have forged in 2019. And if you look at the recommendations that were put forward, you will see that one of them was the need to recognize diaspora's development partners and to involve them in project design and implementation. A second was the need to provide technical support to diaspora communities, but also to families in rural areas of origin on agribusiness, market and finance access with a focus on women and youth. It is, however, noteworthy that different types of actors, among which bilateral donors, such as the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation or the German Bilateral Agency, the GIZ, but also multilateral institutions such as the European Commission and the FAO, and also African diaspora organizations themselves have been providing financial and technical support, aiming at unlocking the investment potential of the diaspora for businesses, and also at strengthening diaspora entrepreneurship, notably through business training, mentorship, matchmaking, and in some cases, venture partnerships. So interestingly, some of these African diaspora organizations also respond to the needs of African in this respect by aiming to increase their their employability, their business skills by providing mentorship, business advisory, business development sessions, and investment to enable them to create sustainable income opportunities. And by doing so, we can see that they do play their roles as bridges. So for us, such initiatives happen to be critical as regard the African agriculture sector and agribusiness in particular. They must be supported and expanded if we want to properly address key issues such as food security, unemployment, underemployment. And we know that in theory, we must insist on that, the agricultural sector has a major labor absorption capacity. So basically, if we want Africa to fully leverage its demographic dividend. And in line with or complementing the three levers that I mentioned before, we do believe in ADAF that existing measures must be strengthened and some others must be initiated to literally unlock the potential of the African diaspora in this regard. At policy level, it is instrumental to give a greater importance to the link between migration and development in key sectors for Africa's development, among which agriculture, agribusiness. It's also very important that origin countries ensure enabling environments, proper regulations, and very conducive legislation for African diaspora investment and entrepreneurship. At program level, more specifically, we have seen that, for example, the EU has been strengthening its support to entrepreneurship in Africa through notably its partnership with the Tony Elumelu Foundation and through a program aiming at mobilizing the investment of the African diaspora. And while we fully commend the steps taken, we think that they should be complemented with increased support to African diaspora capacity building in agribusiness, for instance, and by facilitating their ability to share their knowledge and expertise with origin countries. And I will end by saying that in the spirit of the SDG 17 and in the spirit of the Global Compact for Migration, a greater emphasis must be placed on partnerships, be it in residence or in origin countries, which means that where relevant, the inclusion of African diaspora organizations, but also individuals in multi-stakeholder initiatives and actions related to agribusiness must be ensured. And here we can talk in particular of public-private partnerships, because this is something that, in our views, has the potential to really maximize diaspora engagement in agribusiness. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that overview, Karim. One of the things going forward now, we have 5 minutes where we can have a very brief questions and answers. I've been looking at the questions in the chat, of which there are many, and there seems to be a trend of questions discussing the theory of what's discussed versus and the rhetoric versus the reality, and how is it possible to connect diaspora populations and local grassroots populations. And in that regard, I think we can then ask, what is it tangibly that diaspora and local actors who are tuned in today, where can they go to access information on how to get involved? Are there forums coming up where they can participate? Are there hashtags to use to get involved in online debates? What can diaspora and local actors do going forward? I know for ACP-YPN, this is a crucial issue, and that's the reason why we set up so many youth forums as part of the EU-ACP partnership to get young people actively involved in these discussions. So now I'd like to know what your organizations are doing, and so would all the participants. Thank you. Perhaps we can just go in the same order, the speaking order of the first panel.
Yeah, with pleasure. I followed with a lot of interest really all the presentations. And I must say that I must excuse myself with FAO because we do work a lot with FAO and your office in Brussels, which I didn't mention. And so I would like to send a special attention, special salutations to FAO and Mr. Al-Kafashi and his colleagues, at which we work a lot, especially through Ffm. A lot of the things that, what we have done, because we do know, and I saw it on the chat, that the OACPS is the best kept secret in the world, in the development world, because few people know us. And I was also delighted to see presentations from our embassy and my good friend from the Nigerian embassy, Mr. Ubede. Is that we, with the European Union, we built a website or a program called Business ACP, in which we try to regroup all the offers that we have for private sector. I will put the website on the chat. It's not perfect, but it regroups most of the, I would say, activities or facilities put in place by the European Union and the OACPS for private sector development. We are working more towards that, but this only works, or this up to now only regroups all ACP programs. That means programs that are open for Africa, Caribbean, and the Pacific together. Nevertheless, there are other programs at a regional basis and national basis, and we're trying to work together with our countries to see if from here to some time, because there's so many programs going on, that we can have a mapping of those. Because we have recognized that it is a little bit confusing for our private sector and for the diaspora. And sometimes, and I saw the comment as well, you feel that we're not doing enough. Like I tried to say in my presentation, the truth is that we're not doing enough, because the challenges that our countries have are much more than the resources that we have. But together, all of us, and this is what the presentation that I tried to put with all the programs, we are trying to make a difference. So I put the page of businessacp.com on the chat. Please visit it. There you will see a lot of the facilities that you might have. And like our friend Mr. Ubede from the Nigerian embassy was saying, it's not only development money, also a lot of national money is being poured. So it is good that you refer yourselves also to the web pages of the ministries of industry and commerce of your own countries, and then you also find other resources that are available. We will strive together with our partners to try to put together a map that will guide you better. It's a work in progress. And I also want to touch one thing. While I definitely agree that the new is We have to live with the new regulations that seek to really protect the environment and protect the workers and everything. At the OECP level, we advocate two things: time and resources to adapt, because these new regulations are becoming non-tariff barrier for us. We do believe, and I spoke a lot about the need that these regulations, new quality, will also help our own products. But at times that sometimes international agencies think that these things can be put in place, a year for Europe might be relatively long for an SME in Europe to adapt. For our countries is very, very short. Our companies need time and resources to adapt to new regulations, and we strongly favor all these regulations that enhance environment, etc. But we call or make a plea that these regulations must be developed jointly with us. Well, when I say with us, with our producers, so we can take into consideration the reality and challenges that we face on the ground. So I wanted to thank everybody really for the opportunity of being here today. I had put my email, the website of the OECP, I'll also put it. We're at your disposal, and we hope to continue working with our good friends from all the persons that have spoken here. And I really wanted to thank Mr. Jutta for inviting us, and also the Mrs. Duru. Also is great to see you here, and thanks a lot. And of course, Mr. Ubede and the Nigerian embassy. I must say that all the work that we do in Brussels is guided by our ambassadors. We are led by a committee of ambassadors in which Nigeria has a very prominent role. In my own, in the subcommittees that I manage are with my team are private sector and investment is led by Mr. Utrule, Ambassador Utrule, His Excellency from Botswana, and trade and commodities led by His Excellency Mr. Dosso from Ivory Coast. So we really try, and I know that these ambassadors and others in the committee of ambassadors, currently led by the Ambassador Constantino of Angola, are really trying to reach out to our people in home and also in the diaspora. So I thank you very much for your commitment, and I see that we have 131 participants. So that's a great thing. Maureen, thanks a lot for the invitation, gentle. It's always nice. And I feel at home, even if I am not African, I feel very much African. Thank you.
Okay. Very quickly, in really a nutshell, on maybe to summarize how to access support. So I mentioned during the presentation, at the moment there are two major intra-ACP programs, but beyond those two major intra-ACP programs, which are called Fit for Market programs, a number of national programs. The easiest, and I'm going to put it in the chat, is to send an email to support@coleacp.org, mentioning country, your activity, value chain, and then it's going to be up to us to see under which facility it can be eligible in function of the problematic. So we try to keep it as straightforward as possible, currently looking at new ways of making it more widespread known, because we also have this issue of visibility and let people know really how we work and what we do. So I'm going to put it in the chat. I'm going to put the website and the email address, which is an email address which centralizes all the demands. I'd like to thank, of course, all the fellow panelists for the interesting insights, and thank again Maureen and Jutta for co-hosting this event, and wishing everybody a nice following sessions. Thanks, Yentil.
Thank you very much. The organizers of this program, like we said before, it's quite timely. This event couldn't have come at a better time. For those who have heard me speak, I will want to engage. First, if you are in Belgium, you could always liaise with the Embassy of Nigeria. We have an economic desk officer, I think the person of Mr. Francis Enya. He will always be ready to help link you up with linkages. And if you want to go online, you could look at the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council. They have a very robust website, and it's a one-stop shop where you get everything done, from registrations, tax, whatever it is you want to do with investments in Nigeria. If you go to the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council website, or you visit them, it's a very robust platform for engaging, even for the diaspora, most especially. You could also look at the Nigerian Diaspora Commission website or link up with them. I think the chairman of that commission, Mrs. Abike Dabiri, has been very, very engaging with the diaspora. It's another platform you can engage with to actually key into any of the programs of the federal government of Nigeria on agribusiness. I'm sure they will provide you with a lot of insight. Like I said, at the Embassy of Nigeria, we're always ready to receive you, talk to you, give you information, and help you with linkages back home. I think this is the time for the diaspora. It's your time. We want to engage you. We want to go back home. Like I said, the technology we need for the agro-food sector lies in the hands of the diaspora. So it's your time to take it back home. A lot we can do partnering with local producers, the packaging, the technology, like I said, you have it. So let's do more of our linkages back home, and we can actually grow our sector. We have the potentials, we have the capacities and capabilities, and you provide, of course, for us the intellectual human capacity we need to have a very positive admix that could provide not only for the African continent. I think Africa is the new frontier. And if Africa is a new frontier, Nigeria is a destination. So Nigerians should live up, not just Nigerians. If you want to go to Nigeria to do agro business, it's welcoming to everybody. Whether you're from Nigeria or not, we have a very friendly cultural setting. We are home to visitors. And that's why, of course, Nigeria is the next destination for tourism and agriculture. So I welcome you all to Nigeria. It's been wonderful having you all, and I look forward to engaging with you. Maybe next time I will engage with you. I'll be engaging from Nigeria as I'm winding up my activities in Brussels. Thank you very much.
Mr. Al-Kafaji and Karim, do you have any additions?
Well, just quickly, if I may, from our side, of course, our organization is an intergovernmental one. So our main clientele and membership and decisions and policies are discussed with our government representatives. But at the same time, part of this very impressive, let's say, shift in our way of thinking has also been to open up very strongly to the private sector. And we had a new strategy for engagement with the private sector, which was recently approved by our members. Traditionally, the UN was always much more cautious in its dealing with private sector and much more in its dealings with intergovernmental partner organizations or governments. This has changed. We have, in parallel with a very strong due diligence system, we are opening the doors much more to the private sector to collaborate with this private sector, but not only, also civil society, academia, and all parts of the society, simply because the strong belief is that the problems, the challenges that we are facing can only be managed together. The other point that I wanted to make is about a very important term for us, which is innovation. And here the diaspora plays an important role. And when we think of innovation, it's not only the technologies that were mentioned, but it's also the new business models, the new approaches in processing matters, the new technologies, the new digital applications, and most importantly, the innovation of the mindset. And this is something that is very difficult to introduce from the outside, but it is much more accepted when it comes from the diaspora. So somebody who has lived abroad and who knows how things are being done in a more efficient, in a more effective way, in a new approach, has a much stronger access to introducing this back home. Finally, just to mention that obviously our partnership unit is there. There's a lot of information about it on our website. FAO, in addition to its headquarters in Rome, has regional offices, 5 of them around the world. The one for Sub-Saharan Africa is in Accra. We have one for North Africa and the Near East in Cairo. We have sub-regional offices, and there is a wealth of information all across these offices and at our headquarters. And our office here in Brussels will be more than happy to answer any questions and link you with the people. FAO is not a donor organization in the classical sense, but we are donors in the sense of putting together, linking to the technical expertise, linking to events that are happening, linking to the international fora that where it might be of interest and where best practices and measures that have worked in one country and could be applied in another could be found. So for that, our office here will always be at your disposal. Thank you.
So when it comes to ADAPT, we can help in 2 ways. First of all, through our communication activities, because one of the objectives of ADAPT is to give more visibility to the African diaspora actors and to raise the profile of these actors. And so we have a website, of course, but we also have a newsletter and a magazine. And what we do is that we produce video capsules on the project conducted by African diaspora actors. We also produce fact sheets, and we will be more than happy to receive information about the projects that are conducted by African diaspora stakeholders in Africa, so in agriculture, agribusiness, and to give visibility to that. And the other way is through our capacity development activities. ADAPT provides technical support, but also small grants. We, of course, have some eligibility criteria, but I would recommend that you visit our website so that you will have more information about that, and you will see if you fit, if you can apply for these small grants, and we will be really more than happy to give you some response and some orientations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to wholeheartedly thank this first panel who have shared their expertise and all the resources that are available. They are being shared and will be communicated to all participants.